Здравствуйте! Доброе утро, добрый день! Добро пожаловать на урок русского языка. Итак, давайте начнем работать. Давайте начнем наш урок. Today, let's begin with a very short review of everyday commands. You know, I begin every lesson with "Здравствуйте." And yes, it is a command form. Stay well, be healthy. Здравствуйте. Very often you need to say something like, well, excuse me, please. Простите, пожалуйста. Простите, пожалуйста. Скажите, пожалуйста. I have just given this one to you. Скажите, пожалуйста. А как это по-английски? Скажите, пожалуйста. Tell me, please. That's a very useful one. Скажите, пожалуйста. Well, when there's a knock on the door and we need to invite people to come in, what do we say? Входите, пожалуйста. Входите, пожалуйста. А как по-английски please wait a minute? Подождите минуточку. Подождите одну минуточку, пожалуйста. You always want to add пожалуйста so that you don't sound so commanding. If you would like to ask your friend to go to a movie with you, how would you say that? How would you suggest that both of you go to a movie? Давай пойдем в кино. Давай пойдем в кино. Or when you are talking to more than one friend, to a group of people, you just say давайте пойдем в кино. Ну, хорошо. Also from урок номер 13 that we have been studying with you for a while already, we learned commands like возьмите, take, положите, put down, дайте, пожалуйста, give me please, and do not forget, не забудьте, не забудьте. You should remember that Russian commands exist in two forms, familiar forms and polite forms. Здравствуй is familiar and здравствуйте is formal and polite. Не забудь, familiar, не забудьте is formal and polite. Дай, пожалуйста, is familiar. And what's the polite version of this? Дайте, пожалуйста. What we do here is we add те, and it turns a familiar command into a polite command. Дайте, пожалуйста. Well, since дайте, пожалуйста is our newest command, let's practice. Let's work with дайте, пожалуйста. Итак, это ручка. Now let's imagine that you don't have a pen and you need to ask me to give you a pen. How would you phrase your request? Дайте, пожалуйста, ручку. You are addressing your teacher. I'm an adult person, so you need to use the polite form. Дайте, пожалуйста, ручку. And then I would say, пожалуйста, and give you the pen. Okay. How would you ask me to give you this pencil? Дайте, пожалуйста, карандаш. Пожалуйста. Так, посмотрите, пожалуйста. Это интересная книга. Now ask me to give you this book. Дайте, пожалуйста, эту книгу. You are asking for this particular book. So you need to say эту книгу. Дайте, пожалуйста, эту книгу. Пожалуйста. Хорошо. У меня есть интересный журнал. So how would you ask me to give you this magazine? Дайте, пожалуйста, этот журнал. Дайте, пожалуйста, этот журнал. пожалуйста, это очень интересный журнал. Ну, хорошо, хорошо. А сейчас возьмите свои книги, возьмите свои учебники, Урок номер 13. Урок номер 13. I want you to find page 228. Page 228. On page 228, we have all these interesting dialogues. We are mostly interested in two dialogues. The first one begins «Ты взял рубашки?» «Ты взял рубашки?» Конечно, взял. Did you find this one? And then we are interested in the dialogue that comes right after it. Антон, вот твой чемодан. Вот твой чемодан. Хорошо. Сейчас мы посмотрим маленький видеофильм. And this short video will present these two dialogues. Listen closely, and after the dialogues, we will be searching for the command forms. Итак, давайте посмотрим маленький видеофильм. Смотрите, watch, и слушайте, listen. Смотрите и слушайте очень внимательно. Пожалуйста.
Ты взял рубашки?
Конечно, взял.
А бритву?
Бритву забыл. Положи ее, пожалуйста, в мой чемодан.
Хорошо. Антон, вот твой новый чемодан.
Спасибо.
Ты положил брюки?
Да, положил.
А рубашки?
Тоже положил. Вера, а где моя бритва? Дай мне ее, пожалуйста.
А вот она.
Спасибо. Вера, где твои новые туфли?
Вот они.
Ты возьмешь их на юг?
Да, конечно, возьму.
А эти вещи не забудь их.
Хорошо, возьму. Антон, возьми свой новый костюм.
Хорошо, возьму.
Ну, хорошо, хорошо. So what commands did you hear in this dialogue? You can use your textbook and let's search for command forms in these two dialogues. How about the first dialogue? Do we have anything here? Yes, we do. Where is it? Положи ее, пожалуйста, в мой чемодан. Put it, please, into my suitcase. Положи ее, пожалуйста. And we are talking about бритва. Положи ее, пожалуйста, в мой чемодан. Положи is your command form. Is this a familiar or a polite command? It's familiar, right? We don't have the yeah at the end. It is a familiar command. Положи ее, пожалуйста, в мой чемодан. Хорошо. Now let's look at the next dialogue, which is rather long. So, do we have anything here? Well, we have several. What's the first one? Дай мне ее, пожалуйста. Дай is our command form here. Is it familiar or polite? Familiar. Дай. Дай мне ее, пожалуйста. Хорошо. Do we have anything else here? Right in the next line. Вот она, возьми. Возьми. Take. Here it is. Take. Take it. Возьми. That's another familiar command. We probably have a conversation between husband and wife here, so they are being very familiar with each other. Хорошо, let's continue. Do we have anything else in this dialogue? Yes, we do. Не забудь их. Да? А эти вещи, and these things, do not forget them. Не забудь их. Не забудь их. Another familiar command. And we have one more. Where is it? Антон, возьми свой новый костюм. Антон, возьми свой новый костюм. Take your new suit. Возьми свой новый костюм. Хорошо. Хорошо. А сейчас let us find the text «Ничего не забыл». We are on page 227, страница 227. Давайте прочитаем этот текст. Давайте прочитаем текст «Ничего не забыл». From the first part of this text, we learned several new words. You remember that we learned the word путевка, путевка, an accommodation pass, and we talked about it, so you know what it is. If you don't remember, you can read about this word in section 13.9 on page 226. Итак, путевка. Then we learned the word прекрасно, fine, excellent, beautiful. Прекрасно. That's what Vera said when she learned that Антон получил путевки. What can be more beautiful? They are going on a vacation. They will go to the south to a nice vacation center and have a lovely vacation there. Прекрасно, прекрасно. And right at the very end of the first part of this text, we have the expression «все, что нужно». Все, что нужно. Everything that we need, everything that you need, everything that is necessary. Все, что нужно. And that's a very good expression for you to remember. Ну, хорошо. А сейчас давайте начнем читать вторую часть. Хорошо. We shall start today with «В четверг она спросила». В четверг она спросила: «Твои рубашки нужно взять?» «Конечно», — ответил муж. «А брюки?» «Брюки тоже». So, what's going on here? On Thursday, в четверг, she asked, она спросила: «Твои рубашки нужно взять?» Do we need to take your shirts? Конечно. Of course. And I hope that you do remember that word. This is a very good conversational expression. Конечно. Of course. Конечно. Let's take a look at this. Конечно. Конечно. There's a little trick to pronunciation of this word. Instead of the ch sound, the ch sound, we have an sh sound, the sh sound. Конечно. One more time. Конечно. Of course. Of course we need to take my shirts. Конечно. Хорошо. So let's continue. Твои рубашки нужно взять? Конечно, ответил муж. А брюки? Брюки тоже. В пятницу, on Friday, в пятницу Антон положил в чемодан свой костюм. В субботу Вера положила еще его туфли. This is very interesting. In these two sentences, we have an interesting play upon possessive pronouns. So let's look at this one more time. В пятницу Антон положил в чемодан свой костюм. So Anton put his own suit into the suitcase, right? Свой костюм. В субботу Вера положила еще его туфли. And what did Vera put into the suitcase? His shoes. Вера положила еще его туфли. И вот они на юге. And finally, here they are in the south. И вот они на юге. Вера говорит: прекрасно. Мы взяли все, что нужно. Мы ничего не забыли. So what does she say? Excellent. Мы взяли все, что нужно. We took everything that is necessary, or we took everything that we need. She thought about every little detail, didn't she? We took everything that we need. Мы ничего не забыли. We did not forget anything. And now let's read the final sentence here. Она еще не знает, что Антон забыл дома чемодан. So, what is happening here? She does not know yet that Anton left the suitcase at home. Она еще не знает, что Антон забыл дома чемодан. Ну, хорошо. Итак, мы прочитали текст «Ничего не забыл». Keep your textbooks open to page 227. And very quickly, I want you to give me the answers to these questions. Итак, куда поедут Вера и Антон? На юг. Они поедут на юг. Что они положили в чемодан в четверг? В четверг они положили в чемодан рубашки и брюки. Да? Рубашки и брюки. And you can figure this out from the dialogue between Vera and Anton. В четверг они положили в чемодан рубашки и брюки. Что положил Антон в чемодан в пятницу? В пятницу Антон положил в чемодан свой костюм. А в субботу что Вера положила в чемодан в субботу? В субботу Вера положила в чемодан его туфли. Сейчас они на юге. Что говорит Вера? Прекрасно. Мы взяли все, что нужно. Мы ничего не забыли. А что забыл Антон? Что Антон забыл дома? Он забыл дома чемодан. Сейчас они на юге, а Антон забыл дома чемодан. Ну, хорошо. This is one of my favorite texts in this entire textbook. I love Vera and Anton. I think they are a very cute couple. Ну, хорошо. А сейчас давайте сделаем упражнение. I have been asking you a lot of questions. Now I want you to practice with asking questions. So let's take a look at this exercise. I want you to ask questions about the highlighted phrases. Pretend that you do not know that part of the sentence which is highlighted. Ask questions. Ну, хорошо. Итак, вы уже сделали это упражнение. Давайте посмотрим, что вы написали. Вера и Антон поедут на юг. Now, what question can we ask if we do not know their destination? Куда поедут Вера и Антон? That's your question. Where will Vera and Anton go? Куда поедут Вера и Антон? Куда? Remember, that's how we ask about the destination. Куда поедут Вера и Антон? И номер 2. Что сделали Вера и Антон? Now, we don't know what it is that they did. We need to find out. So we ask, что сделали Вера и Антон? And I hope that everybody used the perfective verb сделали. Сделали. Что сделали Вера и Антон? Вера и Антон положили свои вещи в чемодан. Положить is a perfective verb, so in the question you also have to use a perfective verb. Ну, хорошо. Хорошо. Молодцы. So, the title of the text that we read and discussed today is «Ничего не забыл». And we have double negation in this short sentence. «Ничего не забыл». I think I already mentioned it to you that double negation and even more multiple negation is the general rule in the Russian language. You have to construct a negative sentence, then you have to negate every word in that sentence. That's how we end up with multiple negation. But let's limit ourselves to just double negation, and we will look at the sentences and try to construct similar sentences, and then we will apply that knowledge to different situations. So let's look at this sentence. Антон ничего не забыл. Anton did not forget anything. Now you know that ничего means what? Nothing. It carries the negative prefix ni. And then we have the negative particle не right before the verb. Антон ничего не забыл. Please read the sentence in your classrooms. Антон ничего не забыл. Now, how do we make sentences with double negation? What kind of rule do we have to go by? Let's take a look at these two examples. Виктор все знает. Как это по-английски? Victor knows everything. Да? Victor все знает. Now let's go from Victor knows everything to Victor doesn't know anything. Let's make the sentence negative. Виктор ничего не знает. In our second example, we have the word ничего, which means nothing. And then, we also have to negate the meaning of the verb. So we use the negative prefix, the negative particle не, right before the verb. Виктор ничего не знает. Okay, so I want you to read these two sentences in your classrooms. Хорошо. So instead of все, in our negative sentence, we are using ничего, which means nothing, and then we always have to use the negative particle не right before the verb. It negates the verb. Виктор ничего не знает. So this is our model. Now let's practice constructing sentences with double negation. Let's work on our negative sentences. I want you to change the following sentences and make them negative. Use double negation according to the Russian rules. Ну, хорошо. Итак, вы сделали это упражнение. Давайте посмотрим, что вы написали. So, our first sentence was Наташа все купила. How can we make it negative? How can we say Natasha didn't buy anything? Наташа ничего не купила. Ничего, nothing. And then we have to use the negative particle не right before the verb. Ничего не купила. And then we need to say that Андрей did not do anything. Андрей ничего не сделал. Again, we use ничего, nothing, and we precede the verb with the negative particle не. Не сделал. Did not do. Андрей ничего не сделал. Наташа ничего не купила. Андрей ничего не сделал. Ну, хорошо. Хорошо, let's develop this theme and we'll practice orally now. Let's look at a few pictures. Listen closely to my questions and I want you to give me answers in the negative. He did not do anything, he did not buy anything, he does not know anything, whatever the situation requires, but you have to give me negative answers. Итак, пожалуйста, давайте посмотрим на эту картинку. Скажите, пожалуйста, он все купил? Нет, он ничего не купил. He did not buy anything. Он ничего не купил. Хорошо. Скажите, пожалуйста, он все видит? Нет, он ничего не видит. Он ничего не видит. He doesn't see anything. And let's look at this. Он все знает. Нет, он ничего не знает. He does not know anything. Он ничего не знает. Ну, хорошо. Хорошо. Сейчас all I need to tell you is that right after this lesson is over, I want you to start working on your additional exercises and then at home, take your textbook, find lesson 13 and on page 227, please read and translate the entire text. Ничего не забыл. In the workbooks, I want you to find lesson 13 and on page 102, work on sentences 19, 20, 22, 24, 26, and 27. You will be working on the reflexive possessive modifier свой. Reflexive possessive modifier свой in the accusative case. So this will be an excellent reinforcement of what you learned during your video lessons. Ну что ж, большое спасибо! Сегодня мы с вами много и хорошо работали. Мы много сделали. Спасибо. До свидания. Здравствуйте! Доброе утро, добрый день! Добро пожаловать на урок русского языка. Итак, мы изучали урок номер 13. Урок номер 13. And we more or less completed the study of урок номер 13 in the Russian for Everybody textbook. So today we are meeting with you for a review of this lesson, and then you will go ahead and take a test that is based on this particular unit of study in the textbook, урок номер 13. So today we will try to go one more time over all those things that you need to remember quite clearly for your test. So let's begin with dative pronouns. I think you know them very well, but let's take one more look at our dative pronouns. Мне, тебе, ему, ей, нам, вам, им, кому. Хорошо, let's take this off the screen and please tell me what's the dative form of я. Мне, ты, тебе, мы, нам, вы, вам, они, им, он, ему. What's the dative of она? Ей. And what happens to the interrogative pronoun кто? Кому. Да? Кто changes into кому. Хорошо. Do you remember when, in what situations do we use the dative forms of personal pronouns? We use the dative case when we express a person's age and that person has to be in the dative case. We also use the dative case for indirect objects. We very often use the dative case with verbs of communication, right? And we have been over that. We've been going over that many times. Then we also use the dative case when we construct sentences with expressions of necessity. I need to go to the library, you need to cook supper. Мне нужно пойти в библиотеку, тебе нужно приготовить ужин. So there are several situations that call for the use of the dative case, and that's why we keep coming back to what are the dative forms of personal pronouns. Do you remember them? And I hope that you do. Ну, хорошо. So expressions of necessity. What are the two words in the Russian language that help us say that it is necessary for us to do something? Нужно and надо. So let's take a quick look at this. Expressions of necessity. Нужно, надо. Мне нужно пойти в магазин. You remember that in the sentences of this type, we use the dative case of the person, then the word нужно or надо, and after that we add a phrase that expresses what it is that we need to do. Мне нужно пойти в магазин. And there's absolutely no difference between нужно and надо in meaning. They mean the same thing. It is necessary, so you can use them interchangeably. Хорошо, хорошо. Итак, мне нужно пойти в магазин и купить мясо, рыбу, овощи, фрукты, хлеб и молоко. Вера и Антон поедут на юг. Им надо купить новый чемодан. Хорошо, хорошо. Do you still remember the little rhyme that we learned with expressions of necessity? Мне нужно читать, тебе нужно писать, нам нужно работать, а вам отдыхать. So let's say it one more time. Мне нужно читать. Тебе нужно писать. Нам нужно работать, а вам отдыхать. If you remember this rhyme, then you are in a very good shape when it comes to expressions of necessity and how to use them. Ну, хорошо. А сейчас мы посмотрим маленький видеофильм. And in this video you will hear several conversations. I want you to listen very closely. Listen for the use of expressions of necessity here. Итак, пожалуйста.
Андрей, ты уже сделал уроки? Давай пойдем в кино.
Нет, мне еще осталось написать упражнение номер 2. А ты уже сделала уроки?
Да, я уже сделала уроки.
Здравствуй, Наташа. Куда ты идешь?
В магазин. Мне нужно купить хлеб, молоко и чай. А что ты делаешь?
Я иду домой. Пока. Оля, давай пойдем сегодня в кино.
Хорошо, давай. Ты уже купил билеты?
Нет еще.
Тогда нам надо спешить. Фильм начинается в 7 часов. И нам еще надо купить билеты.
Ну, хорошо. Хорошо. А сейчас let us discuss the difference between должен and нужно. Должен and нужно. We can say он должен написать письмо. He must write a letter. Он должен написать письмо. But we can also say ему нужно написать письмо. He needs to write a letter. Ему нужно написать письмо. What is the difference between these two sentences? Let's take a look at this. Он должен написать письмо. Ему нужно написать письмо. Now, in the first sentence, we are using the nominative case. Он and then должен is a short form adjective, and you remember for this word we have the masculine, feminine, neuter, and plural forms. In the second sentence, we have the dative case of the personal pronoun ему. That's the dative case of он. And it is followed by the word нужно. This word never changes. It always stays in this form. Нужно. Ему нужно написать письмо. There's also a very strong interest in a very strong difference in meaning between these two sentences. When we say он должен, we imply that it is his moral responsibility to write this letter. Он должен написать письмо. When we say ему нужно написать письмо, we imply that the external circumstances make it necessary for him to write this letter. So the responsibility rests with the circumstances, but not with the person involved. Ему нужно написать письмо. Ну, хорошо. Хорошо. So you remember that we say он должен, but ему нужно. With нужно and надо, you always have to use the dative case for the person. Ему нужно, ей нужно, мне нужно написать письмо. А сейчас нам нужно сделать упражнение. The circumstances, very soon you will be taking a test, make it necessary for us to practice a bit more. Нам нужно сделать упражнение. Возьмите свои ручки, карандаши, тетради, and I want you to change these two sentences with должен into sentences with нужно or надо. So change these sentences using expressions of necessity. Так, ну хорошо, хорошо. Итак, вы уже сделали это упражнение, и давайте посмотрим, что вы написали. Она должна купить продукты. Ей нужно купить продукты. It is necessary for her. Ей нужно купить продукты. And your second sentence should say им нужно сделать уроки. Or instead of нужно, you can use the word надо. Им надо сделать уроки. But the important part here is for you to use the dative case. The dative case. Хорошо. Let us practice a bit more, and I want you to change 2 more sentences. Again, the task remains the same. Change the sentences and use expressions of necessity. Ну, хорошо. Вы готовы? Are you ready? Вы готовы? Я думаю, что вы уже сделали это упражнение. Итак, номер 3. Он должен спешить. How can we change this sentence? Ему надо спешить. Посмотрите, пожалуйста. Ему надо спешить. Ему надо спешить. And instead of надо, if you'd like to, you can use нужно. Ему нужно спешить. И номер 4. Мне нужно сделать это. Мне нужно сделать это. Your sentences should begin with the dative case. With нужно and надо, we always use the dative case for the person. Ну, хорошо. Хорошо, молодцы. Another very important thing that we learned from урок номер 13 is the use of the reflexive possessive modifier свой. Свой. Remember, we discussed свой, its meaning and its function in the sentence very carefully. You remember that свой always refers back to the subject of the sentence and establishes the relationship of ownership. And that the subject is performing a certain action on something that belongs to him, not to another person. Борис читает свою книгу. Да? Борис is reading his own book. Хорошо. Свой is a modifier, and it means that it agrees with the noun in number, gender, and case. And you should also remember that свой changes endings exactly like the modifier мой. So on pages 192 and 193 in your textbook, there is a chart that tells you how to change endings on modifiers when they occur in the accusative case. And you can always go back to that chart, look at the column with мой, and change endings on свой accordingly. Мой and свой have exactly the same pattern for the endings. Ну, хорошо. Since these endings are so important, you have to remember that in the modifier-noun relationship, the noun leads and the modifier follows. If a noun changes its ending in the accusative case, then the modifier has to change too. But if the noun stays the same, then the modifier doesn't have to do anything. With masculine inanimate nouns, neuter nouns, and plural inanimate nouns, everything is easy. These nouns do not change. But feminine nouns and masculine animate nouns change their endings. And it means that we need to remember how to change endings on modifiers. So let's look at these examples. Нина положила свою книгу на стол. Да? Свою книгу. Feminine. Нина положила свою книгу на стол. Хорошо. And let's look at an example with a masculine animate noun. Нина читает и не видит своего брата Максима. Да? Брат, Максим, masculine animate nouns. In the accusative case, they receive the a ending, and we have to put the его ending on the modifier to make it accusative. Masculine animate accusative. Хорошо. Хорошо. Ну а сейчас давайте сделаем упражнение. Возьмите свои ручки, карандаши, тетради и давайте сделаем упражнение. We are practicing with the reflexive possessive modifier свой, and I need you to complete the following sentences with the appropriate forms of the modifier свой. Итак, пожалуйста. Ну, хорошо, хорошо. Давайте посмотрим, как вы сделали это упражнение. Итак, Максим положил свою книгу на стол. Книгу is a feminine noun in the accusative case. We change the ending to у, and we have to change the ending on the modifier. Свою. We are making this modifier agree with noun in number, gender, and case. Свою книгу. Я не вижу своего друга. Друг is a masculine animate noun. In the accusative case, it received the a ending, and on the modifier, we have to put the ending ого. Своего друга. Masculine animate accusative. Своего друга. Я не вижу своего друга. I do not see my friend. I expect him to be here, but for some reason I do not see my friend. Я не вижу своего друга. Ну, хорошо. Хорошо. And now let's practice with asking questions. During class, you mostly answer my questions, or I hope that you do. But I need you to receive good practice with asking questions, asking different types of questions, so you will be prepared for communication when it's necessary. Итак, возьмите свои ручки, карандаши, тетради, и давайте сделаем упражнение. This time I want you to ask questions about the highlighted phrases. Ask questions about the highlighted phrases. Ну, хорошо, хорошо. Давайте посмотрим, какие вопросы вы написали. Номер 1. Им нужно купить новый чемодан. If we don't know what it is that they need to do, how can we pose a question? Что им нужно сделать? Да, что, what do they need to do? Что им нужно сделать? Номер 2. Андрей поедет на юг. And if we don't know where he will go, we simply ask куда, where to, куда он поедет. Where will he go? Куда он поедет? Номер 3. Завтра, tomorrow, завтра мы пойдем в кино. If we don't know about the time, the day, how do we pose a question? We start with когда, when. Когда мы пойдем в кино? Завтра. Когда мы пойдем в кино? Ну, хорошо, молодцы, молодцы. Итак, сегодня мы много работаем. Мы уже много сделали. We have accomplished a lot, but there are other things that we still need to go over. Итак, давайте продолжать. Let's continue. This time I want you to tell me what you will say in Russian in these situations. So tell your friend that you need to do your homework. Tell your friend that you need to do your homework. You are talking about yourself, right? So you start with мне нужно сделать уроки. I need to do my homework. Мне нужно сделать уроки. Хорошо. You meet your friend at a department store. So ask him what he needs to buy. Что тебе нужно купить? What do you need to buy? Что тебе нужно купить? Now, how will you pose this question to a female friend? In exactly the same way. You don't have to change a thing now. Что тебе нужно купить? You remember that the word нужно doesn't change. Нужно or надо always stay нужно and надо. They don't change. So, что тебе надо купить? Or что тебе нужно купить? Хорошо. Tell your friend that you need to hurry. Мне нужно спешить. I need to hurry. It is necessary for me to hurry. Мне нужно спешить. Хорошо. And finally, ask your pen pal how old he is or how old she is. Do you remember that one? Сколько тебе лет? Да? Сколько тебе лет? You are probably corresponding with someone who is in your age group, so you can afford to be very familiar. Сколько тебе лет? And then when you identify your own age, you begin with мне. Мне 17 лет, мне 18 лет, мне 19 лет. Ну, хорошо. Хорошо. So right after this lesson, I need you to start working on your additional exercises, and there will be more practice with all the grammar material that you need to brush up on for your test. All those things that we learned with you from урок номер 13. And now let me tell you what exactly you need to study for this upcoming test. Итак, what to study for the test? Take your textbooks and find урок номер 13. Урок номер 13. Well, very carefully. study sections 13.1 and 13.3. You need to review expressions of necessity and the use of the reflexive possessive modifier svoj. Also review dative case of pronouns, and then very carefully go over all the new vocabulary that we learned with you from урок номер 13, lesson 13 in the Russian for Everybody textbook. Your test is, of course, based on урок номер 13. Итак, сегодня мы много работали. Мы много говорили по-русски, много читали по-русски, много писали по-русски. Сегодня мы много сделали. So please continue your review with additional exercises, study hard, and I wish you lots of luck on that test. Спасибо и до свидания.
Welcome to our Russian World Cultural Program. Today you will have the privilege and opportunity to explore Russian folk music and dance. Folk music, dance, arts and crafts of Russia are the integral part of Russian culture, which reflects the spirit and history of Russian people. Folk music and art grew from deeply rooted traditions that have been passed on from generation to generation for centuries. Today, you will learn about different folk instruments such as the balalaika, bayan, guitar, and wooden spoons. You will hear Russian folk songs and view live performances by Russian folk musicians and dancers. Their energy and authentic presentation will give you a genuine taste of a real Russian carnival or festival. The Russian folk groups will perform traditional and internationally known and loved songs. There may even be an opportunity for you to participate. You will also study different kinds of Russian folk art, such as Khokhloma, Gorodets painting, Matryoshka, and Palikh painting, and see its beauty, artistic perfection, refined qualities, and marvelous craftsmanship. As you watch the presentation, we would like you to keep this question in mind. How does Russian folk art, crafts, dance and music reflect Russian culture?
Sudarinya and Karusel are Russian folk groups which perform traditional Russian and Cossack folk songs and gypsy romances. The audiences delight in seeing and hearing traditional Russian instruments such as the balalaika, bayan or button accordion, guitar, wooden spoons, and Russian horn, among others. The balalaika is one of the most beloved and popular Russian folk instruments. It is a stringed musical instrument with a long neck. The body of the instrument has a triangular shape. Balalaikas may have 2 to 4 strings, but most have 3 strings. They vary in size. Some balalaikas are so large they must rest on the floor, but most are much smaller. The balalaika circulated throughout Russia with only 2 strings until the 16th century, when Ivan the Terrible lived up to his name and banished all court minstrels and wandering musicians. The instrument disappeared for a long time, and it did not emerge again until the 18th century. Ukrainian-born Sergei Vashenko dazzles audiences on the balalaika. Beginning his musical education on this traditional Russian instrument at an early age, Sergei studied his art at the most prominent schools of music in Russia. We find an interesting description of balalaika players in the Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from the Dead House. The orchestra began to play. The balalaikas were unimaginable. The deftness with which fingers plucked the strings was equal to a most agile of tricks. Every possible dance tune was played. In the most animated places, the balalaika players knocked the sounding board with their knuckles. The tone, the taste, the rendition, the handling of the instruments, the interpretation, everything was highly individual, original. The accordion is a reed-type musical instrument worn on straps around the shoulder. The player stretches and compresses bellows, forcing air through metal tongues to make them vibrate. The right hand plays keys arranged in the order of the scale, like piano keys, while the left hand presses buttons that produce single tones and chords. The instrument you hear has 11 rows of buttons with 87 notes. Vladimir Kalyazin hails from the Baltic state of Latvia. He began developing his skills in the bayan accordion at the age of 5. Vladimir graduated from St. Petersburg Conservatory. His talent has earned him accolades from all over the world. Vladimir's bayan is a Russian 5-row chromatic accordion. The balalaika and the bayan are frequently played together. Sergei Vashenko and Vladimir Kalyazin have joined together to form an ensemble called Kalinka. Kalinka features both of these virtuoso performers who have toured extensively through Russia, Europe, and North and South America. Dmitry Chaskis, a native Russian, uses the guitar and a popular folk song, Moscow Nights, to teach Russian vocabulary in a Russian language class. See if you can join in with Dmitry.
And there it goes. Не слышны в саду даже шорохи. Все здесь замерло до утра. Если б знали вы, как мне дороги подмосковные вечера. Если б знали вы, как мне дороги подмосковные вечера. Речка движется и не движется, вся из лунного серебра. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти тихие вечера. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти тихие вечера. а рассвет уже все заметнее. Так, пожалуйста, будь добра, не забудь и ты эти летние подмосковные вечера. Не забудь и ты эти летние подмосковные вечера. Хорошо. Well, this may take a little bit more practice both for you and for me, but I think it's a great song, and I would like you to hear it once again.
Не слышны в саду даже шорохи, все здесь замерло до утра. Если б знали вы, как мне дороги подмосковные вечера. Если б знали вы, как мне дороги подмосковные вечера. Речка движется и не движется, вся из лунного серебра. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти дикие вечера. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти дикие вечера. А рассвет уже все заметнее. Так, пожалуйста, будь добра, не забудь и ты эти летние подмосковные вечера. Не забудь и ты эти летние подмосковные вечера.
Folk songs are remarkable for their diversity. The early songs, Хоровод, Round Dance, and calendar songs, relating to the seasonal year, were preserved from the period before Russia's conversion to Christianity in the 10th century. A unique place in both literature and music is occupied by the Brylini, heroic ballads, which describe events occurring from the 11th to the 16th centuries. Some of the Brylini were taken over by the historical songs describing specific historical events that occurred between the 16th and the 18th centuries. Another kind of song is the Duchovnia Stikhi, spiritual verses, which are melodically similar to the Brylini and the historical songs, but employ subject matter taken from the Bible and the lives of the saints. Wedding songs occupy a special and substantial place in Russian folk music. Collected over a long historical period, they form an essential part of the traditional peasant wedding, a long and elaborate ritual accompanied by songs and laments. Other types of songs are the comic or humorous songs performed by the Skamarukhi, the Russian clowns or buffoons. Unique in Russian folk song is the so-called lyrical song. Noted for its rich melodic content, rhythmic freedom, and wide vocal range, the lyrical song may be said to express the poetic feelings of the performer. Other types of songs include town songs, chastushka, witty jingles, Christmas carols, soldier and sailor songs, prison songs, revolutionary songs, and children's songs. A very popular Russian song is Katyusha. Here, students perform Katyusha at the Russian Festival in Dallas, Texas. Russian folk song and folk dance are closely connected. From the earliest period of Russian history, there is evidence to show that folk dance played an important part in pagan and subsequently Christian ceremonies. The various events of the seasonal year were commemorated in song and dance. An important part of these events was a round dance called Khorovod, performed and accompanied by dramatic action and singing. The Russian Carousel performs an outstanding musical program of folk songs and dances based on traditional fairy tales of Russia. They bring fantasy to life with the help of music, props, puppetry, and masks. Also, the Carousel presents an extraordinary collection of traditional Russian musical instruments and antique folk costumes dating from the 18th and 19th centuries. Famous Russian folk dances include the squatting dance and the dance with bent knees. The trepak, which comes from the Old Russian verb trepat, to stamp the feet, is a dance in 2/4 time, performed at a lively tempo. From the frozen Siberian city of Krasnoyarsk comes a dance company with unique treasures of folk dance, Krasnoyarsk Dance Company of Siberia. Based on Siberian folk dances and songs passed down over hundreds of years, the ensemble transports audiences to the vast and beautiful places of Siberia with their deep folk melodies and original costumes. The performers follow one after another in a symphony of dance, at times slow and graceful, and other times swift and sparkling. While talking about Russian dancers, we cannot help mentioning the Gypsy and Ukrainian dances. Both have a great influence on Russian folk dancing. This gypsy dance is performed by students of Krasovska Ballet Jeunesse of Dallas. The Kazachok and Gopak are both Ukrainian dances. Enjoy beautiful Ukrainian dances performed by Zarya Ukrainian Dance Ensemble. Zarya Ukrainian dance ensembles' dance style and costumes represent geographic location, climatic conditions, and spiritual and traditional beliefs of various regions of Ukraine. It is a dark night in the Carpathian Mountains, and the Hutsuls gather to celebrate the festival of Ivan Kupala, a mythical matchmaker who brings happiness and prosperity to a deserving man and maiden. Mystery and anticipation fill the air. Mountain horns signal the approach of the man who builds a ritual fire and dances the secretive Arkan, followed by the rousing couple dance, the Kolomeyka. We find ourselves at the Zaporozhian Sich on the banks of the Dnipro. The Zaporozhian Cossack Brotherhood, led by their hetman, celebrate the arrival of a new recruit. During their sword and spear training, the hetman informs the Brotherhood that they must ride out to defend their homeland. Triumphant Cossacks return to their village, greeted with traditional bread and salt, and are reunited with their families. The Cossacks and villagers break into a spontaneous celebration with the Hopak, considered the national dance of the Ukraine.
You have had an opportunity to enjoy different kinds of Russian folk music, songs and dancers. You will continue to hear Russian folk music as you learn about Russian folk art in Part 2.